The Star Wars franchise has been around for a whopping 45 years, with 11 live-action films hitting cinemas during that time, plus the animated Clone Wars feature. That's quite a lot of movie, and yet there still hasn't been enough screen time to give every tiny detail the attention it deserves. A recent Reddit thread discussed that very subject, with Star Wars fans bringing up various details that were either explored too little or not explored at all. I'm Emil from What Culture, and these are 10 Star Wars details that are almost never mentioned. 10. The impact of Owen and Beru's death on Luke. The final scene of Revenge of the Sith shows Obi-Wan Kenobi handing an infant Luke Skywalker to Owen and Beru Lars, who go on to raise the boy like he's their own. In A New Hope, Owen and Beru are murdered by Imperial soldiers, with Luke stumbling across the grisly sight of their charred corpses after returning from a chat with Obi-Wan. Though Luke is visibly shaken when he discovers what has happened to Owen and Beru, he immediately sets out on the path to becoming a Jedi Knight, and the impact that their deaths surely had on him is never mentioned again. Luke seems sadder about Obi-Wan's death, a guy who he barely knows, than he does about the deaths of a couple who, for all intents and purposes, were his real parents. With their deaths being so brutal, you'd imagine the image of their crispy bodies would gnaw at his insides constantly, especially considering he never got to say goodbye, or thank you, or anything. From a certain point of view, it's quite cold. Number 9. How Palpatine built a Star Destroyer fleet without anybody noticing. How do I even... Let's do it anyway. Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker did such a bad job of explaining things that you had to go and play Fortnite if you wanted more context of the story. Even when the movie did explain things, these explanations were lazy, such as Poe's regularly memed line about how Palpatine has risen from the grave. Somehow, Palpatine has returned. Thank you, JJ. Clears things up. Something else the movie doesn't explain is how exactly Palpatine managed to build a massive fleet of souped-up Star Destroyers, a hugely important detail that the movie glosses over entirely. Where did he get the materials? How did he equip each ship with the planet-killing laser? How on Exegol did he finance this whole venture? With this fleet being the centerpiece of Palpatine's plan, it's unforgivable that the movie doesn't even try to explain it. And though extra backstory is available for those who want to do some homework, it's a total head-scratch for folks who only watch the films. 8. Droids can possess human levels of sentience. Some of the most beloved characters in Star Wars are droids, with the likes of C-3PO, R2-D2, and BB-8 delivering many highlight moments in the movies they appear in. Despite this popularity though, something the movies never really discuss is that droids can possess incredibly high levels of sentience, and yet they're often treated as emotionless, disposable, or even just as jokes. Take C-3PO in Return of the Jedi, who seems terrified at the prospect of working for Jabba, and even expresses self-doubt, wondering aloud if he did something to warrant Luke leaving him behind.
What could possibly have come over Master Luke? Is it something I did?
Oh, 3PO, come here, give me a hug, if you can feel it. In that same movie, we even see a gonk droid screaming with pain while being tortured, which makes you think about all the other times droids have been damaged or mistreated and how they must have felt. Though the concept of droid rights was touched on in Solo: A Star Wars Story, it's an issue the movies have never done justice, despite the crucial role various droids have played in almost every single film. Droid rights now! 7. EWOKS are highly skilled fighters. Mention the EWOKS to a casual Star Wars fan and they'll probably start talking about how adorable they are, which is fair enough. Just look at their fluffy little faces. Oh. But look, something people never talk about, and something that, if their reputation as lovable plush toys is anything to go by, the movies haven't made clear, is that the EWOKS are among the most skilled fighters in the Star Wars galaxy. Just look at how they completely outclass the technologically superior Empire in Return of the Jedi. They coordinate their ambush outside the shield generator perfectly, starting off by using R2 and 3PO as a distraction, and following this up by forcing the Imperial troopers to split up and run into the woods, right where the EWOKS want them. And that's not to mention how bloodthirsty they are, with the little beasts fully intending to dine on Han until 3PO's magic convinces them otherwise. The EWOKS look fairly harmless, and the majority of their scenes are played in a light-hearted way, which greatly distracts from their brutality and combat efficiency. Teddy bears, they most certainly are not. 6. The destruction of the Death Star brought the Empire's followers closer together. The destruction of the first Death Star at the end of A New Hope was a huge victory for the Rebel Alliance, but if you look at it from the Empire's point of view, then it was nothing short of an act of terrorism. The movies never touch on the fact Luke murdered millions of innocent people when he blew up the planet-killing machine. All those janitors, technicians, what about the chefs, who were only working for the Empire because it was a job, or because they were too scared to leave? Further still, it's highly likely that this mass murder actually brought people from the Empire closer together, and possibly even galvanized the additional support for the Empire across the galaxy. Though this angle was somewhat explored in 2017's Star Wars Battlefront 2 game, the movies never take the time to ponder such interesting details, with the ramifications of the Rebels' victories never being looked at from the opposing point of view. It almost makes you want a Taken 2 style spin-off, where the father of a murdered Death Star employee hunts down Luke to enact his revenge. Go on, Disney, you know you want to. 5. The Jedi are incredibly rare mythical beings. The Jedi are prominently featured throughout the entire Skywalker saga, from Obi-Wan and Anakin in the prequels to Luke in the originals and Rey in the sequels. This ends up giving off the impression that there's a Jedi on every street corner, making it easy to forget that in actual fact they are mythical beings, and that the vast majority of people in the galaxy have never actually seen one.
Luke Skywalker. I thought he was a myth.
Because we follow one of these lightsaber-wielding heroes for each of the 9 core movies, it does feel they're way more common than they actually are. Remember, the Jedi Order is fairly reclusive during the prequel era, and pretty much extinct for the next 6 movies. 4. The dark side of the Force isn't inherently evil. Force users are divided into 2 camps, the Jedi and the Sith, or the light and the dark. The movies draw a firm line between these 2 camps, telling us that the dark side is evil and that light, well, is right. Jedi want that on a t-shirt. While most on-screen evidence points to this being true, a notion that isn't fleshed out is that the dark side in isolation isn't necessarily evil. Rather, it's the users of the dark side who abuse its power for their own selfish or chaotic intentions. Look at someone like Count Dooku. Though he wields the dark side of the Force, he hasn't let emotions like anger and hatred corrupt him, like they have for so many other Sith. Instead, he uses his dark side abilities with control. He's clearly far more level-headed than the likes of Vader and the Emperor, proof that dark side users need not become mustache-twirling megalomaniacs. And then there's Dark Vectivus, who also practiced the dark side but never let it consume him and could stave off that destructive temptation. Despite what the movies might tell us, wielding the dark side doesn't automatically mean that a person is evil or that they will always succumb to the lure of power. It just depends on the person. 3. How Maz Kanata acquired Luke's lightsaber. When Maz Kanata pulls Luke Skywalker's blue lightsaber from a box and hands it to Finn in The Force Awakens, Han Solo asks her where she got it. Her response? A good question for another time. In hindsight, her refusal to give an explanation feels startlingly similar to Poe's "somehow Palpatine returned." Sorry, I can't even say it anymore. And though this particular detail arguably isn't as important, it's nonetheless frustrating that the movies never reveal how Maz acquired a lightsaber that was presumed lost deep within Cloud City. Some fans have headcanonized that because Maz was a pirate queen, she acquired it via her connections to the smuggling world. After all, she's lived a long life, so had plenty of time to stumble across it. Other Star Wars media has discussed the lightsabers post-Luke Fate 2, revealing that a random Ugnaught found it on Cloud City and kept it from being destroyed. But as for how it made its way into Maz's hands, that's a good question for another time. 2. Dismemberment makes Force users less powerful. Though the whole midichlorian thing has been largely swept under the rug in recent years, it's still part of Star Wars canon. Midichlorians which live inside the body's cells are linked to Force potential, so the higher the midichlorian count, the more Force potential an individual will have. So what would happen if that count was suddenly reduced? In a 2005 interview, George Lucas himself spoke about that idea, discussing how dismemberment would affect a Jedi or a Sith's Force abilities, stating Anakin actually became less powerful after Obi-Wan chopped him into bits. Lucas went on to explain that the Emperor viewed Luke as a primo version of Anakin, simply because his body was more intact, and this was why he offered the younger Skywalker the chance to join him. Despite this idea coming straight from the horse's mouth, not a single Star Wars film has ever delved into it, which is bizarre considering how the franchise's 2 main characters both suffer dismemberments at various points. 1. The severity of the Republic's Geonosis defeat. The arena battle in Attack of the Clones is a terrific spectacle, but the ramifications of its outcome are severely underplayed throughout the rest of the prequels. To recap, Jedi Master Mace Windu leads a strike team into the Geonosis arena to rescue Anakin, Obi-Wan and Padme, only to be met by an army of battle droids. An all-out brawl ensues and many Jedi are slaughtered, with the survivors being rescued by Yoda, who whisks them away with some rather handy gunships. Despite hundreds of Jedi entering the arena, there's only a handful of them left when Yoda shows up, meaning a vast majority of what was supposed to be the most formidable fighting force in the galaxy was killed within minutes. Even worse, Mace tells Yoda before the battle, "I'll take what Jedi we have left," implying the ones in the arena were all the Jedi that remained. Weirdly though, the rest of the prequels fail to convey how catastrophic it was that so many Jedi died in such a needless manner. I'm afraid to say there's not much we can do about this now, but let's just hope that Palpatine somehow doesn't return.